Lucy, Lucy, Lucy. By now, Wordsworth has managed to create enough curiosity in us, even when we have known that she is already gone. But if Lucy is dead, why is she so relevant? What are the things about Lucy that made her so special that after losing her, the narrator or the speaker feels so lost? Today, we will see her growing up in front of us, transforming into something which could be called the most ideal beauty possible and the most ideal soul. So stay with me till the end of this lecture as we go through the lines of this very, very haunting poem, 3 years She Grew. It was in the third poem that we get to know the name of Lucy. But that's it. No history is yet provided. So we look at the lines of the fourth poem. 3 years she grew in sun and shower. So it begins when she was 3 years old. Now we all know that when infants are born up to a certain age of 2 or 3, they follow their instincts. And then comes the time when they are restricted by societal rules, by education. Okay. So for Lucy, the first 3 years were very similar to any other child. Unrestricted life, sun and shower, full of nature's blessings. But what happens with other children is that at the age of 3, they are introduced to human society and its rules through schooling, preschooling, or even if it is not the situation, they are often at least subject to discipline. What kind of discipline does Lucy get? Then nature said, so nature is personified here. Nature is acting like a human being, like a guardian of Lucy. And nature said, a lovelier flower on earth was never sown. So nature looks at Lucy and realizes that she is like a very beautiful flower and the most beautiful flower on earth. This child I to myself will take. So that is the moment when nature decided to take control of Lucy's life. That means at this moment in her life, when she was about to be inducted into human society and its rules, she was instead inducted into nature and its rules. She shall be mine, and I will make a lady of my own. Look at the kind of possessiveness of nature here, that nature will mold Lucy according to her rules, and that will bind her to nature forever. Now, I don't know if you are acquainted with Kalidasa's drama Shakuntala. If you are an Indian student, chances are you have heard about it. There, the same kind of an environment is seen to nourish Shakuntala. She is an orphan. Her mother was this divine dancer and she had left her. And she grew up in the ashrama of Kanva, who was a sage. And Kalidasa describes Shakuntala's growing up, her surroundings, in the very same way as Lucy is described here. Why I am bringing these references is because Kalidasa also captures the innocence which we see here reflected in Lucy. And this innocence is something like a universal archetype, which is always seen to be unsustainable. In case of Kalidasa, that innocence could not survive the onslaught of reality. In Lucy, the same thing happens because innocence is something which is sustainable only if it is in paradise, and that is also before the fall. Anyway, we will look at how Lucy was growing up under the guidance or tutelage of nature. Here, nature is like a teacher. My self-will to my darling be both law and impulse. Now, nature has two elements. or components. One, nature has its law. It is a very stern and strict disciplinarian. Like if you do not follow the law of nature, you will not survive. But at the same time, nature is also about impulse. It does not stop you from doing those things which human society stops you. So, being in nature does not mean you lead a life of selfish wantonness, but a kind of regulation which is biological, natural, and in tune with your impulses too. So, nature will provide the law, and nature will also guide her impulse, her instincts, what she desires. And with me, the girl in rock and plain, in earth and heaven, in glade and bower. So he is being repetitive here, Wordsworth. And nature is saying that I will be like a teacher, like an instructor, and she will be able to navigate across rocks, plains, all kinds of natural surroundings. And while she is moving around in different parts of nature, she will constantly feel a presence, a divine assurance of protection. Shall feel an overseeing power to kindle or restrain. Now, these two words, law and impulse, are parallelly connected with the two words kindle and restrain. How? Law is about restraining, stopping you from doing something bad. So, nature will provide her with the restraining power. At the same time, her imagination, her creativity, her empathy, all these impulses will be nourished and kindled, that means lighted, by the same inspiring figure of nature. So, natural education is what Lucy will get. Wordsworth was not the first one to talk about this. I will take you back in time to another person who talks about this kind of education, and his name is Jean Jacques Rousseau. In his book, Emily on Education, he writes that the world of adults is oppressive. Children are naturally good. In fact, they are the seat of creativity and genius. Rousseau was also the one to give the idea of the noble savage. That is, a human who lives in a state of harmony with nature is the one who has the capacity for feeling. That human being has the drive for self preservation, that is instinct, but also has the goodness of helping others. So that is the nobility of spirit that Rousseau talked about, and that kind of education is what Lucy is seen to have received from nature. And this has always been nature's plan. And we are now given a list of the things that nature had planned for Lucy, that what she will be if she will be under the guidance of nature. She shall be sportive as the fawn. Fawn is this baby deer, very spirited, jumping about. So Lucy would have the same quality of cheerfulness, youthfulness, energy that a fawn has. That wild with glee across the lawn or up the mountain springs. So the fawn which springs up, which jumps around and runs about these mountains and lawns, Lucy will be like that fawn. And hers shall be the breathing balm. Look at the calming alliteration, breathing balm, alliteration of B. Balm means something which is like a soothing lotion or potion or whatever you apply as an ointment. So balm is a medicine. So what will be the medicine of Lucy if she is ever hurt, especially emotionally hurt? Hers shall be the breathing balm, and hers the silence and the calm of mute insensate things. So when she will be hurt, when she will require some kind of remedy, these mute, insensate things of nature, which are otherwise not living. Maybe the river, the rocks, or non human things like the flowers and grass. These things will provide her with the breathing balm, the calm. But they do not have what human beings have. They do not have the faculty of speech. Because speech is something which is used more in order to lie than in order to say the truth. Don't you agree? So, language, that is a paradox, is often used not as a tool of communication, but as a tool of disharmony. And nature's world does not have human words. So, the natural world is mute. But that does not mean it cannot provide Lucy with the assurance of a remedy from her stress. The floating clouds their state shall lend to her. So the floating clouds have what kind of state? The state of elevation, the state of flying about, the freedom, the royalty. And Lucy will look up at the sky, look at the clouds, and the clouds will help her realize her royalness. So they will provide her with the kind of grace that is required. Usually women back in those days, they were trained to behave like princess, like aristocrat ladies. But Lucy's teacher is the cloud. Nothing can be more graceful than that. For her, the willow bend. Willow is usually a tree with stooping branches. It appears that they are always weeping. That's why this idea of weeping willow is there. So it will look as if when Lucy will go, the willow tree will bend in front of her because she is so graceful, so much like a queen that the willow will offer its respect to her. Nor shall she fail to see, even in the motions of the storm, grace. When there will be storm, usually people get afraid, but Lucy will not be frightened by a storm. She knows that the storm is as much part of nature as is the calm. And she will be able to detect grace, divinity, even in storm. Grace that shall mold the maiden's form by silent sympathy, an inner understanding of the storm and the calm as equal ingredient of the natural life. Her body will be turned into the body of the perfect maiden. The stars of midnight shall be dear to her, and she shall lean her ear in many a secret place where rivulets dance their wayward round. So you have this word wayward recurring in Lucy poems. The rivulets, the small little uh, tiny river-like streams which either come out of rivers or reach as tributaries, they have this dancing movement, and Lucy knows how to understand that music of nature. And she will not just love that dancing rivulet, she will also love the silent stars of the midnight. So her development is going to be a wholesome one. And beauty born of murmuring sound shall pass into her face. So whatever she observes in nature, hears in nature, will transform her and change her so that she becomes every day a little bit more beautiful. And vital feelings of delight, not just her appearance, her emotions will also change. And you'll notice that all these stanzas begin with a quotation mark, which means that this is what nature is saying, that if I train her, then these things will happen. And vital feelings of delight shall rear her form to stately height. So when she grow up, she'll grow taller, and she will be filled with empathy, vital feelings of delight, happiness. Her virgin bosom swell. So even when she is growing up in the laps of nature, her body will never be restricted to develop into the woman she is supposed to. So nature will ensure that she attains the right kind of maturity when she grows up. So her bosom, her breasts, they will swell just like any other girls. But she'll be a virgin. She will not be corrupted by the world of men yet. Such thoughts to Lucy I will give. So this is nature speaking. Such thoughts to Lucy I will give, while she and I together live here in this happy dell. This line might appear a bit disturbing because if nature is the figure of a mother or a father as a parent figure, then usually parents don't have this kind of feeling that I'm going to stay with my child forever. Every child has to grow up someday, fly away from the nest. Every parent knows that. So, nature here is not just a parent figure. Nature here is also transforming into a lover figure. Nature is like this all possessive figure who will not only make sure that Lucy grows up into a woman, but stays like that with nature forever. So, where does any lover come here in this entire setup? Nature doesn't allow that. So, it's a grim growing up. I don't know, you might say. But this is ideal growing up. An ideal might not always be realistically fulfilling. That's why it's not sustainable. So, nature says that nature will take care of Lucy in this happy dell. Does nature speak? Spake is an archaic form of spoke. Archaic means old fashioned. Thus nature spake, the work was done. So this line is shaped almost in the way biblical lines are shaped, like let there be light and there was light. That kind of a pattern is followed here because for Wordsworth, nature is no less than God. So obviously when nature is speaking, it might sound or it should sound as if the Christian God is speaking to a Christian. So that same kind of majesty is required. So Wordsworth deliberately uses the expression spake and makes the sentence sound like this. Thus nature spake, the work was done. There is no quotation mark here. So this last stanza is spoken by the narrator, speaker, poet, Wordsworth, whatever you think, but it's not nature. So up till here, nature was speaking that I will make Lucy this, I will make Lucy that. And then the narrator is saying, or the poet is saying, or the speaker is saying that this is how nature planned. And the work was done. That means nature did what nature had planned, but there was a glitch in the plan. How soon my Lucy's race was run. Race is like the allotted time in this life. We all are given some kind of allotted time and space. And when we run that, it's over. So Lucy's race was very short. That means nature had many things planned for Lucy. But I don't know, and the poet doesn't know how nature missed the most vital point. That is Lucy's lifespan. Isn't death a part of nature then? Or isn't death a part of nature's plan? She died and left to me this heath, this calm and quiet scene. Lucy is gone, but nature is still here. And nature is now everywhere, like a reminder to the poet of Lucy. The memory of what has been and never more will be. So that same nature which reminds the poet of the beauty, grace, vitality of Lucy is a reminder of her absence too. So the dual aspect of nature is revealed in a different way here. So what we find in this poem is that nature is being an active participant in creating the persona of Lucy. So for the romantic poets, nature is never a passive background. It is an active agent, or rather, a divinely active agent, which transforms human beings. And Lucy is that ideal form of woman which can hardly sustain reality, So she's just gone. If you read this poem very casually, you might make some mistakes. So I'm mentioning them so that you avoid them. First of all, the poem says, 3 years she grew in sun and shower, and some student begin to feel that she died on her third year. No. It was after she was 3 years old that nature took control of her life and she grew up to become a completely mature woman. And then she died. Okay? So it doesn't say that she lived for 3 years. It says that she was 3 years and then nature took control of her life. Before that, nature controls everybody's life. So this is not to be confused here that she was under some other tutelage before that. No. From the moment of birth till somebody attains the age of initiation into education, that phase is entirely natural. But usually, what happens is we are taken away from nature when we are 3 years old. But in case of Lucy, she continues to remain under nature's care. Second important point I want you to remember is that if any quotation is given from this poem and it is asked that who is the speaker, because usually Lucy poems are directly narrations of the poet. Therefore, when it comes to Lucy poems, whenever you see I or me, you know that it is the poet speaking or the narrator speaking. But in this poem, you have to remember that most of the lines are spoken by nature. So just don't look at a line where there is I or me and think that this is spoken by the speaker. No, it is spoken by nature. So be extra careful when you are dealing with this poem and it comes to reference to context type questions. All right. Only the last stanza is spoken by the narrator of the poem or the persona of the poem. Otherwise, the entire poem is like a speech which begins with the second line. A lovelier flower on earth was never sown. From here, nature begins to speak. All right. So keep that in mind. Otherwise, this poem is a very simple one. You have to remember the different kinds of comparisons that are used, like she's compared to a deer and how the clouds will make her graceful. So the intimate connection of Lucy and nature is the main point of this poem. And if you are to write about the central idea, you have to say how Lucy represents that idea which was developed by Rousseau and then taken up and adopted by Wordsworth himself. That idea of the noble savage. But then, if Lucy was dead and the poet moved on in life, he must have seen a lot of places, been in a lot of cities. What made him remember Lucy and how did he feel when he came back, if he ever came back to these places? For that, you have to wait for my next video when we'll wrap up this session with the final poem, I Travelled Among Unknown Men. So till then, stay subscribed. This is Monami Mukherjee signing off. Bye-bye.